Welcome to the Sound of Ideas from IdeaStream Public Media. I'm Stephanie Haney. Thanks for being with us. An estimated 96 million people across the country engage in birdwatching. It's a hobby that's grown increasingly popular over the years. According to the National Audubon Society, birdwatching has been shown to have a positive impact on people's moods and mental well-being. Starting next week in Northeast Ohio, you will likely be noticing happier moods around the area because more birds will be in our area. That's because Lake Erie is known to be one of the best rest stops for migrating birds. As they travel north to their spring and summer habitats, this is after spending the winter in Central and Latin America. But migrating birds are facing some population decline. This is due to climate change, habitat loss, and other factors. Today, as we continue our week-long Earth Week series, we'll talk about bird migration and how we can be better stewards of the environment these creatures depend on. The Sound of Ideas is partnering with Cleveland State University student journalists this semester. This segment about bird migration was produced in collaboration with students from the Advanced Reporting class at CSU. And joining us in studio, the guests that the students have booked for us today, we have Jen Brumfield, better known as the Bird Guru, a natural resources coordinator for the Cleveland Metro Parks, who received the American Birding Association's Lifetime Achievement Award in 2021. Jen, thanks for being here.
Absolutely. I'm thrilled.
We appreciate it. Very exciting for us as well. We also have with us nature photographer Gabe Leidy, who has spent the last decade photographing birds and other wildlife, both here in Northeast Ohio and across the world. Gabe, thanks for being here.
Delighted to be here with both of y'all.
We appreciate it. Now, if you have a question or a comment about bird migration, you can give us a call. The number to do that is 866-578-0903. Maybe you have a favorite spot where you're looking forward to watching them next week as they make their way. You can also send us an email at soi@ideastream.org, or you can message us on Instagram. We're at The Sound of Ideas. Jen, for people who might not know about it, what makes Northeast Ohio and Lake Erie such an important stop during bird migration?
Well, we are smack dab in the middle of a flyway. We are actually bordering the Central Flyway, Mississippi River Valley Flyway, as well as the Atlantic Flyway. So every spring, every fall, we get millions and millions of birds migrating through this corridor, using the Great Lakes to boost them up into the Canadian boreal forest. They're following river tracks, stream tracks, over land. So this site, where we are geographically, is spectacular, and especially on the shore of Lake Erie, where birds will stack up. They're exhausted. They need to stop. They need to rest, refuel before they carry on over Lake Erie and working their way up further north.
It's like along that road trip. It's like, we're ready to take a stop. We're going to do it right here.
Exactly like a road trip. Yeah.
Lucky for us, we are very uniquely and conveniently situated to be a part of this. Now, Gabe, so the birds are coming from Central and South America. What species end up staying here in Northeast Ohio for the summer that you're able to capture more often, I would say?
So, one thing that's unique and kind of underrated about Ohio, I think, is the variety of habitat options that we have. The eastern part of our state is kind of the Appalachian foothills, and then, if you've ever gone out west, it gets very flat very quickly. So we have sort of out there some remnants of the prairies and the Great Black Swamp. So a surprising percentage of these birds that pass through in migration do in fact nest locally as well.
Okay. Jen, any species you think we should be on the lookout for particularly?
Oh, so many. Utilizing all of Cleveland Metro Parks, 18 reservations through our 25,000 acres. There's warblers, at least 25 species, scarlet tanagers, Baltimore orioles, orchard orioles, flycatchers, sparrows. What is about to happen and what has begun over the past couple weeks is a pulse that should keep you thrilled out in the field for quite some time.
I just love the name warbler.
It's a good one.
It's just fun one.
Yeah,
It's just fun one for me.
a good
That's
one.
all. Okay, we have an email from Lucy in Seven Hills. Lucy says, I've been birding for over 25 years, the single most satisfying habit that she has. Lucy says migration is a mind-blowing phenomenon. This week, Lucy plans to visit Windy Park in Cleveland, then we'll be in Pennsylvania in early May. I see some nodding over here, so we'll check in on that. Yes.
Jen's like the mayor of Wendy Park.
Well, I don't know about that.
throwing
Ed
that in.
Hauser, who is the mayor of Wendy Park, but maybe for right now, excellent call on visiting Wendy Park, by the way. That is one of our top sites in Cleveland Metro Parks and in Northeast Ohio
That is
for birding.
very, very good to know. Lucy had a little bit more to say. Lucy goes on to say, since 2009, she's researched how to protect birds year-round from window collisions. Of the 1 billion who die each year in the U.S. from window strikes, 46% occur on residential windows. This is something that I did not know. Lucy goes on to say, our home is a testing ground for large films, dots, and paracord. Anything that breaks up reflection on the entire external surface works. That's interesting to know. Jen, do you have some thoughts on that?
I do. There's a number of things that threaten not just birds, but our wildlife during migration phenomena. Birds in particular, unfortunately, outdoor cats that are not kept within the home. That's a significant one. Lack of proper habitat, stopover habitat on their wintering grounds, on their migratory grounds, and on their breeding grounds. That's why preservation, conservation, and the restoration we're doing in Cleveland Metro Parks Natural Resources Division is so valuable.
Okay. We talked a little bit about Windy Park there. Gabe, I'll ask you first. What are your favorite spots to see birds this time of year and the best times of day, if there is a particular time of day that's better to see them?
So as far as this spring migration goes, our lakefront hotspots are, they really concentrate some of these birds that hit that natural barrier that Jen described, which is in fact the lake shore when they're flying north. So kind of moving west to east, McGee Marsh, Crane Creek is like a globally renowned spot for watching migration. In Cleveland, we have Windy Park, we have Cleveland Lakefront Preserve, and then a little further east, Headlands Beach, Menor Headlands area. But the general concept in all of those scenarios is kind of a tiny patch of woodlot that really just absorbs a large fallout of birds, which makes it easy for bird watchers to kind of pick through, and then you get a lot of birders in the same area. You end up with some more exciting finds, and just more eyes in general lead to better results sometimes.
Sure.
And then time of day as well. I mean, a lot of birds move nocturnally, especially these neotropical migrants, so they sort of drop in at dawn, and then there's a different set of birds that kind of move diurnally along the lakefront. So morning hours are always best for peak activity.
Yeah, interestingly, you can watch birds migrate on radar at night. So that is something,
Okay.
We need probably about 5 or 6 hours of this segment to continue on to talk about all these incredible things. But because the majority of our passerines are nocturnal migrants, they're following star patterns, they're following position of the sun in the sky, they're following geographic markers. You can watch them lift up into the air and move through utilizing Doppler radar. It's spectacular.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about actually maybe just the science or the innateness or the learnedness of how these birds are actually doing this. You say they're following star patterns. How do the birds know to do this, Jen?
So, it still is something that scientists, field researchers are digging into because it's so complex. And it involves things like birds having the ability to see magnetic field, to sense magnetic field. The genetic information that's passed down through their parental lineage, that they, as young birds, not following their quote-unquote parents, the adult birds, they're able to navigate from the Arctic tundra, in some species cases, down to habitat in Chile, Argentina. It's spectacular. How they are doing that, there's genetic information, again, that is stored within them. Some of them learn, others are using smell senses and cues alongside the magnetic field, star patterns in the sky, position of the sun, so many different things coming together.
I can't even get home sometimes without GPS.
Yeah.
It's just absolutely amazing what nature is capable of. I certainly can't make it to my parents in Canton, but I'm blaming it on the construction. I digress. Okay, we have an email from Audrey in Cleveland Heights. Audrey writes, the best place to see birds that I have found is the Cleveland Lakefront Nature Preserve. This park is a hidden gem. Last year at this time, I went to the park to go for a walk, and I saw so many birders, so I joined them. They were very helpful and nice. Thank you for that tip, Audrey in Cleveland Heights. We appreciate it. Gabe, I know you've traveled all over the world for your photography. What's your favorite place outside of Northeast Ohio to photograph birds specifically, since that's what we're talking about today?
Outside of Northeast Ohio. I don't know. I mean, a cool thing about traveling, no matter where you go, is that the common birds are kind of uncommon to you. So it's a really neat phenomenon when you go somewhere else and you're just amazed by, quote unquote trash birds, kind of something that we would overlook if we lived there on a daily basis. But yeah, I don't know that I have a specific word. I haven't been everywhere, and we have done a fair amount of traveling, but we have a lot of places to go still, and a lot of national parks that we have yet to visit. So
Okay.
I won't answer that question quite
You
yet.
can't pick a top.
We'll let you dodge that one. It's okay, Gabe. We will. Let's talk about what humans are doing when it comes to migration patterns. And Jen, can you give us some tips on how people can love nature without interfering with these migration patterns?
I sure can. And again, I wish we had more time to discuss in detail. There are so many things that you can do to help. Sometimes it feels immense. Sometimes it feels intense. Like, what can I actually do to help? You can plant native species in your yard, on your piece of the planet. You can plant native wildflowers, native shrubs, native trees. That's massive. In Cleveland Metro Parks, you can stay on trail. Staying on trail allows the habitat that we are working so hard in Natural Resources Division to restore, to maintain. We're out there, working on invasive plant species, eliminating those from the environment, deer program, other things that we're doing to enable our forests to have immense health. All of the different things we're doing to our waterways, our watersheds. So you as a guest, as a visitor, please come enjoy, hit our trails and bring your camera, bring your binoculars, enjoy, but stay on trail. And again, learn about your environment. That is something that is massive. Once you get that curiosity, you can start utilizing eBird, iNaturalist, City Nature Challenge, all these things where you can be involved in sharing your sightings, which we want to hear about.
Oh, okay. And then just increases the collective knowledge.
Absolutely.
About it.
Yep.
We have a few emails in from people now who are recommending some things that people can do in the birding world. If you're just joining us, we're talking about bird migration and how we can be supportive of nature in the exciting time that's coming here to Northeast Ohio. We have two experts on birds here. We have a photographer, and then we also have a nature expert with us today. The number is 866-578-0903 if you'd like to call in to be part of the conversation. You can also email us at soi@ideastream.org. This email comes in from Stephen. Stephen writes, one thing people can do to help the birds is eliminate or reduce landscape lighting. If you really feel like you have to light your property at night, at least make sure none of the lights are pointing up. Jen, is this something that impacts the migration? I wouldn't even have thought of this.
Indeed, it does. So what he is, you said Stephen?
Mm-hmm.
Well, good point, Stephen. If you have lights that are aimed directly up into the air, you want to figure out how you can get those to actually face down towards the ground. Not only will that be saving you money and actually working better for your safety and for your observation, birds, again, they are using these various pieces and parts of our world to navigate. And unnatural light, so light that is not from the sun, not from, seeing stars, they can get very confused by that. There are programs nationwide, worldwide, to turn lights off at residences in large cities because birds genetically do not have the information to understand what non-natural light is, and they see that and get very confused. They'll swirl around and it messes with their navigational senses.
Okay. And Gabe, for you, you're in the photography space, but you're also involved in a sustainable commute journey. Can you tell us about that and how that might help preserve animal habitats?
Sure. I mean, I think it's kind of at the intersection of this conservation, wildlife preservation topic. Tomorrow's Earth Day. This is something I've been passionate about for a few years, but a lot of benefits, some of them tangible, some of them intangible. But so like in my case, I try to one day a week bike commute to work. I'm not saying this will work for everyone, but most of us can ride a bike, and some of us have commutes of varying lengths. We had this emerald necklace that surrounds Cleveland, which I think is a really cool resource to tap into. Biking through busy traffic is not necessarily fun, but if you can work in some of these trail systems, which in my case that's what I do, it really makes it kind of an enjoyable experience, a little bit of a natural therapy, so to speak, and also the physical benefits, the reduction to your carbon footprint. When gas is $4 a gallon and you're biking past a gas station, that feels pretty good too. So
I bet.
Yes.
We've got a call now from Sunny in Southwest Ohio. Sunny, welcome to the Sound of Ideas and to our conversation about bird migration. Please go ahead with your question, Sunny.
I'm a bird lover, and I was wondering where peregrine falcons actually nest in Ohio.
Thank you for the question. Jen, are you able to answer that?
Sure can. That is a great question. So, peregrine falcons are actually doing quite well. They are back from the brink of near extinction. It's been many years now since DDT was banned and other efforts, conservation efforts. Peregrine falcons have adapted to utilizing our cityscapes. So, downtown Cleveland, has multiple pairs throughout the area. You're in Southwest Ohio, I believe he said. Mm-hmm. So he's probably going to see more migrants, but Cincinnati, Dayton, Columbus, multiple pairs of peregrine falcons now are using the sky rises to nest. They'll nest on those ledges.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, before we wrap things up here, some of the reasons not every bird makes it through the migration process. Jen, so can you tell us some of the reasons why that might happen?
Yeah, I'm going to immediately go back to the necessity for our natural habitats. And again, that is our native wildflowers, native trees, native shrubs, our healthy wetlands. Birds migrate. Some species hundreds of miles, others thousands upon thousands of miles. They're burning through 3/4 of their own body fat sometimes each night. They're arriving exhausted, and they need that habitat to support them, to rest, to refuel, so that they can get to their breeding grounds. Species will expire if they cannot find the proper types of foods, whether that is seeds, whether that's insects. So it's really truly full circle. When you have a bird that is departing South America, flying over the Gulf of Mexico, it expects to find native food along the Gulf Coast where it stops to rest. If that source is not there, those birds can expire or become extremely stressed out, or plunge into the Gulf of Mexico if they become so exhausted from not being able to, refuel with the proper amount of insects or crustaceans, whatever it is that they consume.
Thanks for giving us that insight, Jen. We have an email now from Matt. Matt writes in, definitely take a look at Gabe's photos. I found bird watching after the death of my daughter. I found it as a way to grieve away from others and find some peace in nature. I'm currently on my way to McGee Marsh. This is Matt of Because of an Angel Photography. Matt, thank you so much for sharing that with us. And we did get another message here about just the community of birding and the social aspect. So, Gabe, photography can be a solitary practice, but do you find community when you're out doing the photography in the nature?
Yeah, I mean, people in the natural science world in general are just the best people in existence. I mean, they're truly just salt of the earth, kind of agenda-free, and there's a real sense of community. And actually, Jen is a master at kind of creating that sense of community amongst our local birding community. I mean, people really gravitate to her, and now there's like a Cleveland Cuyahoga bird track. It's been really kind of amazing to watch how she's inspired this new generation of younger birders. I mean, birding wasn't necessarily like a young person's game when I got into it. But yeah, I mean, now the amount of people that are involved in birding is so diverse, and they're wonderful across the board. It's a really cool thing to be involved in.
What a great way to get out in nature and see some of the living, breathing things, as we get into the spring, the season of life. So, Gabe, I'm sure you use something other than an iPhone. You want to tell us what kind of camera you use and then give us some iPhone tips for people that don't have it?
Sure, yeah, I can. Wildlife photography, I mean, it can be as expensive as you want it to be and as cumbersome as you want it to be. The really good optics are big and heavy and very expensive, but it also limits your mobility. So it's kind of like a balancing act between your budget and, what you want to do in the field. So I shoot Canon. I have some, variety of telephoto lenses, and I kind of err on the more mobile side because I do enjoy being in nature, moving around in nature, not necessarily just staking out one location or, however, all that being said, the technology in these cell phones now is incredible. I have the newest iPhone. You can now shoot things like shoot raw files with an iPhone, which was, previously like kind of a professional's specialty. You can shoot, for birds that move fast, try using burst mode. You can even just take short video clips and then screenshot those now because the megapixel depth is so good. Like, let's say you see a bird, you don't know what it is, and you want to identify it later. You can use something like a Google reverse image search to, kind of search your little screenshot of a bird that you saw. All things that weren't available to Jen and I when we were learning from books, just, a couple decades ago. So.
Right. Really quick follow-up for you for people who may not be aware. RAW, that's just a really big file size. What is shooting in RAW?
And that's important to note too. Yes, it is a really big file size. It has no compression or editing done to it. So like a JPEG is kind of baked by the software itself. It's already tweaked. A RAW file has no editing done, which allows you more flexibility on the color. It has better detail. It allows you to tweak the dynamic range a little more, but they're big files. So if you are shooting burst RAW files on your phone, you will quickly probably run into a storage capacity issue.
Yeah, they'll be making a lot of money on the iCloud on that one,
yes.
Or whatever device it is you use. Yeah. Final question before we wrap things up here. Jen, are there any nature walks or anything happening throughout the metro parks people should be aware of during peak migration?
Yeah, there sure are. So there are so many that are held and hosted by our naturalists at Cleveland Metro Parks Nature Centers. Check out www.clevelandmetroparks.com. Go to our calendar where you will find a range of different programs, not just nature walks, bird walks, but outdoor recreation, golfing, just different events where you can get outside. And a shout out to, this is Earth Day, but also Earth Day coming up, but also Volunteer Week. If you are interested in becoming a volunteer, we have a phenomenal volunteer program, and they boost our ability to conserve, preserve, restore, and just assist in beautifying Cleveland Metro Parks and keeping it, there for your sheer enjoyment.
Very good to know. I want to thank our guests today, Jen Brumfield, Natural Resources Coordinator at the Cleveland Metro Parks, and also Bird Guru. Jen, thanks for being with us.
Absolutely. That was a blast.
We appreciate it.
Very fun.
And Gabe Leidy with us. You can see more of Gabe's incredible photos of birds and other wildlife photography at GabeLeidyphotography.com. That's Gabe, Leidy photography.com. Gabe, thanks for the time.
Thank you as well.
Now, this segment was produced in collaboration with Cleveland State University's School of Communications Advanced Reporting class, led by student journalists Helena Rosinski and Aubrey Evans. We're going to take a quick break now. When we come back, we'll learn more about the important role that the area's wetlands play in the larger environment, something very important to bird migration here in Northeast Ohio. This is The Sound of Ideas. I'm Stephanie Haney. Stay with us. You're with The Sound of Ideas from IdeaStream Public Media. I'm Stephanie Haney. Thanks for staying with us. Wetlands and ecologically unique and diverse environments that are sometimes referred to as Earth's kidneys. The wetlands are referred to as Earth's kidneys. This is because of the function they serve, filtering pollutants out of the water that flows through them. Northern Ohio has many important wetlands areas, stretching from around the Maumee River in the northwest part of the state, to areas around the Cuyahoga River in our national park, to the coastal wetlands that butt up against Lake Erie. State funding has been allocated to both study and protect these ecosystems through the statewide H2 Ohio program. In Northeast Ohio specifically, the Ohio Lake Erie Commission has awarded $750,000 to the Cleveland Museum of Natural History. This is to continue restoring the Menor Marsh State Nature Preserve. We'll spend the rest of the show today talking about the wetlands in our region. With me in studio, we have Dr. David Kryska. He's a restoration ecologist at the Cleveland Museum of Natural History. David, thanks for being with us here today.
Great to be here.
We appreciate it. Joining us by video call, we have Meredith Tien. She's a naturalist with the Medina County Park District. Hi, Meredith.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. And finally, we have Dr. Lauren Kinsman Costello calling in. She's an associate professor at Kent State University and also works as the lead wetland monitoring researcher at the state's H2 Ohio program. Lauren, thanks for being here.
Hi, thanks for having me.
If you want to be part of the conversation, you can call us at 866-578-0903. You can also email us at soi@ideastream.org, or you can send us a note on Instagram. We're at The Sound of Ideas. Now, David, quite simply, basic level, what's a wetland? How would I know if I came upon one?
Good question. So a wetland is where you have just standing water, and sometimes you have trees growing out of the water. Sometimes you have what we call emergent plants, just plants just growing right out of the water. And it's sort of this perfect convergence of having those plants and animals that can survive in that environment.
Okay.
And so if you walked on it, you might hear insects, you might hear frogs calling. Those are some of the good giveaways. You might hear different kind of birds, red-winged blackbirds. They're really unique places, pretty special.
Does a wetland have to come up against water, or can it exist with just kind of the water that's in it? Does it have to come against a standing body of water that's not part of the wetlands, I guess is what I'm asking.
Yeah, sometimes that's what's kind of unique about wetlands. Sometimes they're on the edge of like lakes. Sometimes they're all by themselves, called standalone wetlands. Sometimes they're moving water, like the Everglades. We might think of that big system. That water is just a slow, thin film of moving water.
Okay, so a lot of variety there. Lauren, what are some of the largest wetlands here in Northeast Ohio?
Some of the largest complexes in Northeast Ohio, you'll see a lot, like you mentioned, along rivers like the Cuyahoga River and along Lake Erie. In Northwest Ohio, was once one of the largest wetland complexes in the whole country. It was called the Great Black Swamp. So it was on par with the whole Northwest Ohio region was one gigantic wetland.
I'll ask the entire group to weigh in on this, but I'll start with Meredith. Meredith, can you tell us about the role that wetlands play in our region, in our larger ecosystem, how important they are and what purpose they serve?
Yeah, so wetlands serve quite a lot of different purposes. They serve as a nursery and protection for a lot of different types of wildlife, as well as homes for wildlife. They serve as a watering hole or a place for different wildlife to, seek out a source of water. They also, like you mentioned, act as a filter or nature's kidneys to filter out different chemicals and things out of the water. And they also serve as a kind of like a sponge where they hold water and actually can help to prevent flooding as well.
David, you're giving a bit of a nod here. Tell us a bit more about the importance of the wetlands.
Oh my gosh. So from like humans, we have to farm, right? And so our farming practices are pretty intensive when it comes to fertilizers. And where do those things go every time it rains? They go down into the wetlands. Our civilizations, like our cities, have a lot of rooftop and blacktop, and that's what we call impervious surfaces. And when that water comes down in big storm events, it's got to go somewhere. It goes down our rivers and it ends up going in the wetlands. And as she mentioned, they are kidneys. I mean, they really do. They take the impact, they filter that, they filter out the sediments that we have from agricultural practices, for example, and that's why they get that nickname, the kidneys.
Okay. Meredith, anything you'd like to add on that? Or excuse me, Lauren, I'm sorry. Lauren, anything you'd like to add on that?
No, absolutely. Wetlands they're often called the kidneys, and that's because they can clean up so many different kinds of pollutants, including harmful nutrients that can drive algal blooms and eutrophication.
All right, we have a call now from Jim in Cleveland. Hi, Jim. Welcome to the Sound of Ideas and to our conversation about the wetlands. Jim, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much. Really important one, especially after you're talking about birds and their migration. I would suggest, or I would love for the folks here to comment on this. You asked the question, what is a wetland? I think it's important for people to understand the implications of the recent Supreme Court ruling in Sackett versus EPA, and actually the current EPA under the Trump administration is now redoing rulemaking around what is and isn't waters in the United States. And the reason that's important is because there's a lot of wetlands that you all have been talking about that have already been knocked out of EPA Clean Water Act oversight, and it stands to be even more. So I would love for your folks to comment on what the implications are for this recent EPA rulemaking after Sackett.
Thank you for the question, Jim. Lauren, are you able to answer any of Jim's concerns there?
Yeah, absolutely. So ever since the Clean Water Act was passed, it included a provision preventing the dredging and filling of what was called waters of the United States. And that effectively has protected or served as protection for wetland systems in this country. But the precise definition of what constitutes waters of the United States has been worked out in the courts. It's gone back and forth over the decades, and the most recent decision really narrowed that definition pretty severely to only a system with a continuous surface water connection. And as you mentioned earlier, there are many wetlands that aren't directly connected to rivers or to lakes. There are many very important ephemeral wetlands. So there have been a lot of statements by scientific organizations, including ones that I'm a member of, stating clearly that that definition of wetlands doesn't align with the scientific definition of wetlands. And the rules are currently being rewritten. Some of the protections that some of these more ephemeral wetlands and things that don't meet that strict definition are being lost.
So when we talk about this, that's a potential danger to the wetlands that's being presented right now. Meredith, what other dangers might the wetlands be facing right now?
There's a lot of different things that you talk about. Losing wetlands. Development is happening at an alarming rate. We have a lot of impervious surfaces that are being installed within those developments. So you've got more polluted runoff that could be coming into the existing wetlands, or you're just simply, developing over top of existing wetlands. So we're losing them at an astounding rate.
David, anything you would like to add? Anything we should be aware of in terms of protecting our wetlands?
That's a big one about those ephemeral wetlands. Ephemeral just means it's not there year round. So let's say you come in and it's dry. These are really shallow wetlands, and it's dry, and that's part of the system. And if someone were to come across that ground, and you wouldn't even think that wetland's there in that particular case. These are often forested wetlands that sometimes we call them vernal pools, and boy, they serve as a laboratory for all sorts of critters like frogs and insects. And those frogs then go out when the pool is dry, and they go out in the forest. One frog in particular called a wood frog, and it bops around in the woods, and it keeps nature in checks and balances. So it keeps those insects at bay. They go into those pools when they're wet, and they keep mosquito populations at bay, which we're all about, right? And so if the more we lose these ephemeral wetlands, the more it comes back to bite us. No pun intended.
Mm-hmm. Meredith, let's talk about some of the specific wetland areas inside the Medina Parks system. Let us know about them and also how you attract people to enjoy these areas.
Right. So we have quite a few different wetland areas, and they're all, a little bit different. So we have some ephemeral wetlands, and we have some wetlands that are connected to other bodies of water. So starting off with like our Litchfield wetlands, that is a man-made wetland, was previously a farm field that was converted into about 80 acres of wetlands. So we added things like hydric soil, aquatic plants, and then the wildlife sort of was attracted to that area after the wetlands was designed and built. On the flip side of that, we have our Chippewa Lake Park, which is 330 acres of natural lake, but then surrounding that natural lake, we have 118 acres of improved wetlands that affect the lake directly by, filtering out that phosphorus and the nitrogen that's coming off of farm field runoff. So we have multiple other wetlands in the parks as well. Some of them are man-made and some of them are natural. And then what we do to sort of inspire people to, come out and check out the wetlands or learn about the wetlands is, we do a lot of programming where we get people really hands-on. So we get them out there catching frogs and holding tadpoles or looking for dragonflies or, the different wildlife that's in the wetlands. So it kind of fosters that curiosity. And then hopefully it inspires them to want to learn more and to be more involved and perhaps even participating in some of our citizen science.
I don't know if the wetlands necessarily need like a PR campaign, but David, I'll ask you about this because when you say the word wetlands, you're talking about, a wet space. I'm thinking about bugs. I'm thinking about mud. Tell me how you're getting people to come enjoy these spaces.
That sounded like fun to me. I know they have such a negative connotation. Like, you think about it, when people say I'm swamped, I'm bogged down, those are different kinds of wetlands.
Right.
So this goes way back. So this is sort of in our cultural psyche, I suppose you'd say. They are such fun places. They're hotspots. They're magnets for wildlife. You can go there and you can see all sorts of animals, from the reptiles and amphibians like turtles and frogs, all sorts of different kind of birds. In that earlier program, boy, they really harbor some really unique birds, secretive marsh birds that people who love to have bird watching lists, like Chase. This is like one of their holy grail birds, sometimes they're called. We've got nesting bald eagles at these places. Mosquitoes are an issue, but mosquitoes are kind of an issue anywhere you go. They're like if you're like a kid in a candy store because there's so much wildlife to see. It's like fin, fur, feather, foliage, birds, bats, bees, bugs. They're a magnet because the water's life, right? And all of these animals come to these places. So I'm happy to be the PR person for that. It's like it's one of those. Trust me, come out on the boardwalk at like Menor Marsh and come see this place, and it comes alive. It fills our senses with all the sounds and all the sights. There's your PR.
I think I heard somewhere, and I won't say from which group or where it was from geographically in the country, but it was an indigenous people that live in cold weather, and they say there's no such thing as bad weather, there's a bad outfit. So maybe that's what we're talking about here is you got to get your wellies on, you got to get out there in the mud, you have to enjoy all of that nature. Donna in Granger Township writes in, I am lucky enough to have a vernal pool in the woods behind my house in Medina County. It is a joy every spring to listen to the peepers and other frogs. Also, the largest swamp cottonwood tree in the state is back there, a very rare habitat in modern Ohio. Donna, thank you for sharing that with us. Lauren, I want to ask you a bit about the research and the monitoring that you're doing, and I want to remind our audience that we are talking about the wetlands here in Northeast Ohio, so if you'd like to be a part of the conversation, you can call us at 866-578-0903, or you can email us at soi@ideastream.org. Lauren is with the H2 Ohio program. So, Lauren, tell us about the data that you're looking at as you study Ohio's wetlands and some of the areas you're working in.
Yeah, absolutely. So throughout the state of Ohio since 2019, Governor Mike DeWine and the Ohio legislature has been investing in things to improve water quality, targeted mainly at those nutrients that drive the growth of harmful and unwanted algae, especially in the western basin of Lake Erie, but just generally putting lots of practices throughout the state that are going to help keep our waters healthier. And one big portion of that initiative is restoring wetlands throughout the state. And the Ohio Department of Natural Resources has restored, I think, 19,000 acres of wetlands to date under this program. But early on, they recognized that the uncertainty around how to effectively restore wetlands, especially if you're interested in one specific pollutant, which is phosphorus, that's the one most important driver of those harmful algal blooms that the H2 Ohio initiative is really focused on. And so they have contracted with a group of university researchers that I lead and coordinate to monitor wetlands throughout the state. So my team at Kent State University is going to, including the Litchfield wetland and the Chippewa Lake wetland, we've been monitoring those since they were completed in Medina County parks, to measure what's in the water in terms of what you can't see, the invisible, like what's dissolved in the water, how much phosphorus is there, and how that water moves in and out of the wetland. Because we think of these wetlands, you can think of them kind of like a bank account. If you want them to stop phosphorus from getting into places where it can cause problems, you want more going in and less going out, just like your bank account. And so we're trying to do that budgeting. And we found that across the board, the ones we've monitored are really effective at removing phosphorus. And there's things we can do to make them even more effective if we continue to study them.
Very good news to hear that you're seeing some good positive results there, Lauren. Now, David, let's talk about the Menor Marsh a little bit. This is stewarded by the Cleveland Museum of Natural History. That land has come back from a lot. So can you tell us a bit about the journey for the Menor Marsh, salt waste being dumped, being ravaged, and what it's taken to get it where it is today?
Sure thing. What a journey. It's the third biggest coastal wetland along the Ohio's Lake Erie shore. And it's about 800 acres. It's nearly 4 miles long. It's a big, long, old, abandoned channel of the Grand River, which is right next door. So it's got about 12 miles of perimeter on that. So it's a pretty big wetland. What do you think about 12 miles? And a campaign in about 1959 to develop it into a marina and a destination came to the museum and lots of other partners, Holden Arboretum and a club named Burroughs Nature Club. They all brought it to the attention, and they all got together. And this is like mid-'60s. So Cleveland, think about it, 5th biggest city in the country, 25th biggest in the world. It was an industrial powerhouse. And that development was just part of the plan there. It always was. But these people got together and did a campaign to raise money to protect a wetland, a swamp, essentially, in a time period when we really didn't do that. This is all pre-Clean Water Act, pre-Endangered Species Act, pre the US EPA even, pre-Burning River. Think about that time, a lot of pollution going on. We know about the Burning River story is so integral to Cleveland. And so they get together and they raise hundreds of $5 donors, which is such an amazing story. You think about it, back then, people were willing to part with $5, which today is $50. So that's a big chunk of income, especially in the 60s. So they're patting themselves on the back, and lo and behold, at the same time, nearby is the Morton Salt Mine, right next to Headland State Park, and they had dug their mine shaft a few years earlier, and they had about 180 million tons of low-grade rock salt sitting on their campus. They needed to move it, put it out for bid. A contractor bought up that and dumped it into a ravine right next to Menor Marsh, Black Brook Creek. And today, the Black Brook Audubon Society recognizes how important that was, or how important it used to be, I guess. So within 3 days, the museum's phone went off the hook that the marsh was dying. I mean, literally, you dumped 180 million tons of low-grade rock salt, and the whole marsh died. All the plants died, all the trees died, and in jumped some invasive plants. Most notably is Phragmites. We may not know what Phragmites is, but if you drive our highways, it's that really tall grass with a big feather plume. When I say really tall, I'm like 14 feet tall. Sometimes we've seen some 24 feet tall, which is pretty amazing. So the marsh died, and by 1973, it was Phragmites as far as you could see in that 800 acres. And there was nothing we could do about it back then. So lo and behold, fast forward, the saltville gets capped. The stream gets rerouted around it so that it's not, this Black Brook Creek gets rerouted around the salt, so it's not, all that pressure from that salt coming in there is relieved. It's being redirected in one small part of the marsh. And basically, what happened after that is all these dead standing trees, perfect firebox, perfect tinderbox.
Oh.
It caught on fire multiple times. Like at least 11 large fires cost the surrounding communities $1 million just to fight all these fires. And it was kind of a running joke in the communities. They knew when, the marsh must be burning, and you knew which way the wind was blowing because 20 miles away, soot would come down. It made international news. We had museum members in South Korea that heard it on the news. And that was when we were like, oh my gosh, we've got to do something about this. It burned the museum's Wake Robin Boardwalk, and we decided to push back that Phragmites. We used brush cutters, just giant, weed whackers with a saw blade on them, because the plant is loaded with silica, so it could cut right through your boots. We pushed it back, and all these native plants came out of the soil seed bank. Like if you're a gardener and you weed, you know that the very next month there's plants coming out of that soil. That's what we call the seed bank, just that first inch of soil that has seeds sitting in it. And that's that kind of phoenix arising from the ashes moment when we knew there was hope, that the salt had been redirected toward another part of the marsh. And so we
give nature just that little bit of help.
Yeah.
And then it will take it to a beautiful place.
Yeah. Resilience is, there's so much resilience.
Sure. We have a question in from Harmon, and Harmon writes, can someone please detail the biochemical process that removes some of the runoff pollutants? Lauren, is that something you can speak to?
Sure, yeah. So there's two main nutrients. Those are the pollutants that in H2 Ohio we're most concerned about. Overall, generally, just the fact that wetlands suck up water, store water, that helps them store lots of different things that are being carried by that water. And the two that I want to talk about are nitrogen and phosphorus. If you're a gardener, you might know these as the fertilizer that you might use to help your tomatoes get a little bigger. Everything needs them to grow, but when they get into places like Lake Erie, it's too much of a good thing, and the algae really love them and grow and sometimes makes toxins, which we don't want for health or recreation. In a wetland, phosphorus doesn't ever turn into a gas, so we just try to store it in a wetland. A lot of phosphorus is stuck to the sediment that water can carry, and so just by slowing that water down and trapping all that sediment, the phosphorus can get trapped. Plants also take it up, so when you see lush plants growing in wetlands, they're doing a lot of work storing both the nitrogen and the phosphorus. And then the one kind of phosphorus, phosphate, is really sticky, so it sticks to soils. And so that's the third way that wetlands remove phosphorus. With nitrogen, it's even a little easier with wetlands because there are bacteria in the soil that can turn that available nitrogen that would otherwise drive algal blooms into a gas, an inert gas that's surrounding us all the time. Nitrogen gas makes up most of the atmosphere. So what's interesting is it's different biological processes, geochemical processes, physical processes for all the other pollutants you might be interested in. And so that's part of why we do a lot of research into how wetlands work, because even though they can be really effective kidneys, if you want them to do one specific thing, there's things you can do to kind of tweak them that direction and get maybe more bang for your buck, especially if the price tag for that wetland restoration is high.
We've got a note in from Claudia in Kent. Claudia wants to know if anyone on the panel is familiar with the book Fen, Bog, and Swamp, A Short History of Peatland Destruction and Its Role in the Climate Crisis. Anybody have familiarity with this? David, Lauren, Meredith? Maybe not. So Claudia writes on, she wants to let people know about this. She adds cultural dimension, having researched the history of wetlands as viewed by different peoples. And Claudia says it's a fascinating read, so a recommendation for anyone who might be interested there. I want to read a note from Marvin, who writes in, beavers are one of nature's wetland managers. Places where expert humans have failed to restore a wetland can be returned to normal very quickly when beavers are reintroduced. And we've got just a couple minutes here, and so I want to ask everyone, what's a favorite species? What kind of animal should we be looking for in the wetlands? Meredith, is there something particularly you enjoy spotting in the wetlands?
Gosh, there's so many things. We definitely have beavers back here in Medina, and so they help to maintain our wetlands. So that's kind of one of my favorites. I also love to tell people that barred owls love to eat frogs. So while they're not living in the wetlands, they do depend on the wetland for one of their food sources. So those are probably my top two.
All right. Lauren, how about for you?
Well, I love great blue herons and I love dragonflies, but as a soil but mud biologist, I have to put in a plug for the microbial life that lives in wetland mud. So if you see like bright orange and it looks kind of slimy, many people think that's gross. I love it. That is a thriving biological activity that is doing all sorts of interesting things with the iron in the soil.
Okay, good to know that. And David, for you?
I love that one. That's hard to trump. I like the secret of marsh birds, the rails and bitterns. Thin as a rail, they make the craziest sound. Another reason why these wetlands have bad raps, because you go in there and you hear these absolutely bizarre sounds. So rails and bitterns.
All right, I'm putting everyone on the spot. I want to know your recommendation for going through a hike or a stroll in the wetlands. Meredith, I'll start with you.
Gosh, I would say my recommendations are to slow down and take your time. Try to observe everything that you can, from the plants to the animals. Look up in the trees that surround the wetlands, as well as down on the surface of the water.
Do you have a favorite spot, Meredith, to go?
It might be biased, but my favorite spot is here at Owen Slugger Nature Center, because we have the Beaver Lodge. We have a lot of different types of wildlife down there that you can view at just about any time of the year. Lots of cool stuff to see.
Thank you. We're in the speed round now, so Lauren, I have to ask you quickly, what's your favorite spot to go?
I love the Beaver Marsh in the Cuyahoga Valley National Park.
All right, there we go. And David, for you?
Menor Marsh.
Menor Marsh. Okay. I want to thank our panel for participating with us in the conversation today. David Kryska from the Cleveland Museum of Natural History. Thanks so much, David.
Great to be here.
Meredith Tian from the Medina County Parks District. Meredith, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
And Lauren Kinsman Costello from Kent State University. Lauren, thank you so much for the time.
Thank you.
If you missed any part of today's show, you can hear a rebroadcast tonight at 9 on 89.7 WKSU. You can also find The Sound of Ideas wherever you listen to podcasts and on the IdeaStream Public Media YouTube page. To get the last word on today's topics, you can email us at soi@ideastream.org or find us on Instagram at The Sound of Ideas. Yesterday, we talked about disaster preparedness, including in the case of flooding and how you should never drive your vehicle through a flooded roadway. Marvin emailed in. Even if you know for sure water on a road or driveway is at a safe level for your vehicle, water can obscure debris or even a washed away section of the road. Then you can get stuck and the water level could rise. Thank you for the additional warning, Marvin. We appreciate it. Tomorrow on The Sound of Ideas, we have more environmental stories. We'll talk about Northeast Ohio's tree canopy, and we'll take a look at the clothing industry's impact on the environment. I'm Stephanie Haney. Thank you for keeping the conversation going. We'll see you back here tomorrow here on The Sound of Ideas.